Hi, this is Amy Savage Flores of Novato, California. Here I am working with Dagny, an 11-year-old fjord mare who's in training with me. We have been doing Art2Ride 2 to 3 times a week for the last almost 3 years. Dagny has been one of the most difficult horses to teach how to stretch, especially at the trot. She has only been able to give us any stretch at the trot within the last few months. Her walk work is great, but we couldn't seem to figure out her trot. Her tendency was just to run with her head and neck straight up, and she would just pull with her strong neck and shoulders. She would rush and get very forward. So I love to see that she has slowed down her stride so she can learn to balance in the stretch. Last year, we found out that she has thyroid problems, so she is on meds to help with that. We believe this is why she has a little bit of a weight problem. We have her on lots of exercise and a healthy diet, so we're doing our best to help her with her weight. This also, I think, contributes to some of the reason why she's had such a hard time finding her balance, having a little bit too much weight on her body. In the past, I had to do modified work in hand at the walk with side reins to get any stretch on the lunge line at all. Now she is learning to stretch with me, moving further and further away from her body. I also found that she does not like pull pressure from the shambone or the lunge line. It makes her really tense and nervous. I have had better success attaching the line directly to the bit. This mare is very sensitive. If you click at her, make any clicking noises at her, or correct her at all, she often overreacts. That has been a challenge for me to give her directions without her getting so upset. But she is getting much, much better. My goal and what I'm working on with her right now is sending her haunches out more so that she will step under herself with her inside hind, which will then help her stretch better over her back. She's still not consistent at the trot, but this is such a huge improvement. So I'm happy with the work she gave me there. So I go ahead and halt her, and I'll change directions. And I'm asking her to soften as she moves away here, but she is struggling and resisting me, so I hold on to her and wait until she relaxes before I allow her to move away from me and get further away from me. Tracking right is a lot harder for her. She likes to lean on her inside right shoulder. She does not step out as well this direction with her inside right hind. So I stay a little bit closer to her here at the beginning to try to direct her body where I want it to be. Which is I want her to soften her jaw a little bit more to the inside, to the right, and I want her to step away with her haunches more so that her inside right hind is stepping underneath. So there she gave me a really good step, and you see how her stretch got deeper. There, much, much better. We go to the trot and up comes her head. So when her head comes up, I lift my hand to follow the angle of wherever the bit is, and I hold passive resistance pressure and send her haunches out. Sometimes I have to bring her onto a smaller circle so that I can direct her body a little bit better. Here we go. So she's giving me a little bit of stretch, but she's not holding it as well this direction. So I'm just working away at getting her where I want. She's not quite going where she should be. So you see how I'm taking a hold with passive resistance and bringing her smaller, closer to me, asking her to move her haunches away. And she's getting a little bit crooked and a little bit defensive, but I just hold to push her through that, and then I'm able to get a little bit of a stretch there. Good. It's getting better. You can see when I bring her to a smaller circle, she gets a little bit nervous and rushy, and that's part of her still trying to understand what the whip means. I have the lunge whip, but I don't use it too much towards her because it just makes her really, really worried. She's gotten better and better about it, but she just starts to get rushy when I use the whip, so I have to make sure that I'm taking a little bit of passive resistance on the line to try to get her to slow down a little bit as I ask her to go out. And she's trying to figure it out. She's wanting to pull on me, so I'm working her through that by setting my hands and bringing her on a smaller circle. Before, I would just release when she would show she didn't like what I was asking for. But Associate Trainer Trisha Yates helped me realize that Dagny was getting out of what I was asking her to do. Dagny is capable of what I am asking, and I just needed to work her through those ugly moments. So there's moments where she's panicking a little bit, and she's not really liking what I'm asking her to do. But if I just stick to it, you see that she gives me a much better stretch, even if it's for a few strides. It does help us get into the place where I want her to be. So as we keep on working on it, it'll just get better and better. And this will keep getting better as we practice and build up her strength. But I'm so excited for the excellent progress that she has made just in the last few months, where she couldn't do trotting stretch at all. Next, I'm going to show you just a really short amount of work in hand with Dagny. She's pretty good at it, so I don't always do work in hand before every ride, but it does really help her kind of get in the mindset of what we're about to do, helps her get in the zone and to really relax. So I definitely like to add it in most of the time, but I don't always do it. And you can see that we have lots of puddles in our arena. We have had a ton of rain here in Northern California, and it's made it a bit difficult to do the work that we need to do. We just got a covered round pen at the barn that we're at, but it's hard to do all the work that we need to do in just a round pen. So on days when it's too muddy and we can't use the arena, we will just ride around the property, practicing our stretch. And the horses really enjoy that too, kind of getting out of the arena and cruising around, but still asking for the stretch while we do that. So that's kind of a nice little treat for them to do that and not just be going around and around in the arena all the time. And she feels really light in my hand here. I like how active she's being, and she just feels really relaxed. So I'm happy with that. So here we go for our ride. When I first get on her, she often feels like she is pulling with her neck and her shoulders. Even in the stretch, it feels like she's just kind of dragging along. So I find that leg yielding really helps her lighten up because it makes her engage and use her inside hind leg. And it just really softens her up. So here I'm working on a leg yield, and it's not perfect. We're working on getting a little bit more straightness. I used to let her really lead with her shoulders a lot because it was much easier for her. But I'm slowly asking and challenging her a little bit more to try to stay a little bit straighter and use her hind end a little bit better. So that's what we've been working towards. So here I add in another leg yield. She got a little spooked by something there, but I just ask her to stretch back down and to move off of my inside leg. And she's doing a better job of staying in a stretch as we ride our leg yield. So I'm happy that she's improving with that. And I'm going to change directions, and she gets a little bit where she's kind of pulling me here. So I just take a little bit of passive resistance and try to soften her up. Try to kind of rebalance her so that she's not just pulling. And again, I'm going to set up a leg yield. Get her thinking about using her hind legs a little more. Make sure she's crossing over with that inside hind leg. And again, she gets a little bit brushy with her shoulders. We're working on that. And I add in one more leg yield this way. That's feeling really good. I'm happy with her improvement on her leg yields. And then here we go to the trot, and right away that head comes right up. So you see that I shorten my reins and take some passive resistance in with my hand. And then I use my inside leg to kind of leg yield her just a tad bit there. And I find that I can get her to slowly stretch lower and lower as we go. So she's starting to stretch there, but she's coming up. So I take a little bit of a hold, passive resistance, kind of wait for her to soften, try to get her to move off of my inside leg a little bit more so that she's using that inside hind leg, stepping underneath her. And you'll see that she comes lower in her stretch. And I'm just asking her to see if she can reach longer and lower in this stretch. And there, she's giving me a little bit better. And she goes like a little bit deeper just for a little bit and comes back up. So I think it's just her still figuring out the strength and the balance of it. And she gets a little quick there and kind of raising up her head. I just set my hands and ask her to rebalance herself. And there she goes, settling back down into that stretch. We're looking for her to slow her stride. And here she's giving me a nice deeper stretch. And she's holding it a little bit longer, which is really great. Really, the key has been to find that sweet spot where she can slow down enough to balance in her stretch, instead of just rushing forward and running. So helping her to slow down and be able to stretch over her back. That's really good there. That was a really nice moment where she's really reaching down. She feels really good there. I'm just smiling watching this because I'm so excited, because I know how hard we've worked. And like I said, she has been so difficult to get her to this place. I'm kind of in awe that she's finally doing it. It's very, very exciting. And I'm really happy with that, so I ask her to walk, and then I ask her to stretch back down because she came up a little bit through the transition, which is totally fine and normal. As she gets stronger, she'll be able to hold that. And just make sure that she's stretching all the way down and really relaxed and soft. It's hard to see from here, but I think I was asking her for a little bit of shoulder 4. I've been starting to add that in a little bit, trying to play with it to help her step under with her hind more. The leg yields have been really useful for her, and I think that shoulder 4 will too. She needs to learn not to be so strong and pulling with her strong neck and shoulders. So these lateral movements will encourage her to use her hind end a little better, crossing under and just getting more lateral movement through her body. So we'll continue to work on those movements to help her improve. And then I bring her the other direction to ride a little shoulder 4. And I wanted to ride it here in front of the camera so we could see better what kind of angle she's getting. It's helpful for me to see too by watching the video. She's falling out of it a little bit there, so I'm trying to help her figure out where to put her body. She's getting little moments of it. It's very interesting to ride, especially I feel the shoulder in with such a long rein. I haven't had to practice that a lot with horses. And when you're learning a new thing, it can be a little tricky. So I too am still figuring out how to help her get her body where it needs to be with such a long rein too. So we'll keep playing with that and work on it and see how we get better with that. I'm really proud of her progress. She's doing such a great job, and I'm so proud of her. So, yay. Anyways, next I have a video of Kai. He is an 8-year-old off-the-track thoroughbred. I've been doing Art2Ride with him 2 times a week for the last year. My client got him from a hunter jumper trainer, and Kai was having lots of issues. He had many behavioral and physical problems. Some of them were biting, rearing, bucking. He had a sore back, sore SI, bad feet, ulcers, and an old shoulder injury from the track. Kai really lucked out with his new owner. She will do anything and everything for her horses. So Kai gets regular body work, supplements, you name it. He gets it. She is a big believer in working bitless and barefoot. So Art2Ride does not promote bitless, but it has been really good for helping rehab this horse. And it is possible to do the stretch work bitless. It's been interesting for me to play with it and figure out how I can help this horse learn how to stretch. It definitely feels different without the bit, but we're doing the best we can, and this horse has made a lot of progress. So I'm very happy about that. And his feet have improved greatly, but they still bother him. He gets very stiff and sore after his trims. In fact, he just got trimmed the week before this video, so he isn't at his optimum. But I did want to include video of him in my submission this year. We have had lots of ups and downs trying to figure out what's going on with his body. And we've figured out that he just completely falls apart physically after his trims. So his owner is going to try a rubber shoe called Sneakers on him, and I'm really looking forward to see how he improves with those. We would get him to a really good place where he was really moving much better, not as stiff, and that he was giving us some really, really great stretching. And then he would just completely fall apart. He would be so stiff, look a little lame, and he just wouldn't want to stretch all the way, and sometimes he wouldn't want to stretch at all. And we started to notice a pattern that it would happen right around when he would get his trims. So we're happy we figured that out, and we're working on doing what we can to help him with that and make him more comfortable. I do not currently do work in hand with Kai because he often tries to bite and sometimes rear. It's not really productive for us at this time, but we will definitely work towards it because I think it would really benefit him in the work that we're doing. He always starts off very stiff. He just needs to move forward before we can get any really good stretch work from him. So often I just send him through his gaits and come back to the stretch work. I have to work at keeping Kai out on the end of my line. He often wants to kind of drift in and not be at the end of my line, which makes it much harder for me to direct his body where it needs to be. So you'll see me continually working on kind of sending him out and trying to keep that contact on the line. He wears a Dr. Cook's bridle, which I don't prefer because it has indirect pressure, which I think is kind of confusing for both the horse and the rider. So I would be really interested in trying a different bitless bridle, kind of exploring what else there is out there. But we're doing the best we can with what we have. And you can see that his walk is already getting much freer. Taking longer strides, getting a little movement and swing through his body. Tracking left is much harder for Kai because of his shoulder injury. He has a little hitch in his step and wants to put more weight on his front left leg. You see me often using my whip to send his haunches out or to direct his shoulders to put weight on his outside right shoulder. His stretch is not as good as I know he can do, so I just keep working at it. And there are times, this direction especially, that I can see him looking a little bit to the outside. So I think some of that has to do with the way that the Dr. Cook bridle works, but also this is just his harder direction to bend. And so we would just keep working on getting him stronger and a little bit more flexible, learning where to put his body. The canter really helps to loosen this horse up. For a long time I avoided the canter because his trot work wasn't that great. And then I just started playing with it a little bit and I noticed that it really helped him. So I've started to add it in, mostly just to help get him moving and loosening up. But he does sometimes stretch a little bit in the canter, so that's great. I'm happy to see that when he's able to do that. This horse used to buck into all of his canter transitions, and we have seen that disappear, which is so exciting. But his trot is starting to get a little bit more fluid here. Still working at finding that stretch from him, getting him to move. Yeah, so I bring him on a smaller circle here to see if I can help get a little more bend. And I'm asking him to move out and step under with his inside left hind there. And he's giving me a little bit of stretch. It's not quite there yet. And then at the walk here, I get a little bit closer to him and walk with him so he has more room to walk. And also I can kind of direct his body, and here he's starting to stretch deeper. You can see him get much freer in his movement in his body here, a little more swing in his step. And you'll notice how he sometimes roots, which we're working on that. So I try to just kind of resist when he wants to root and ask him to, instead of root, to move over with his inside hind. And I'm going to go ahead and change direction. And tracking right. It's a little bit easier for him. Trying to fix my line there. It got a little bit tangled. I'm trying to send him out. It's being a little bit goofy and not moving out for me. Trying to find him and push him to the end of my line. Get a little reorganized here and try again. And I go ahead and just send him up to the trot to try to push him out a little bit more. And I'll come back to that walk work since he's struggling with it a little bit. He's giving me some goofy faces there. I just point my whip towards his shoulder and ask him to move out and focus on what we're doing. You'll notice that his hind end does not push or reach very well. I think a lot of it has to do with his conformation, and then maybe some, stiffness and old injuries in there. But when he gets stretching, you definitely see it improve. It's not as choppy of a movement with that hind end. So he's starting to give us some longer, more swingy strides here in the trot. And then I go ahead and send him up to the canter just to help get him a little more loose here. And he starts to stretch just a tiny bit there. Come back down to the trot, see what we have now. He often gets very rushy in his trot after the canter as he's trying to find his balance again. So I ask him to kind of slow down a little bit, trying to look for that sweet spot where he's active but not running. Trying to find that rhythm. It's getting better. I'm still not getting the stretch all the way down like I know that he can. I know that his feeties are a little bit sore, but he's trying. I kind of lost him there. But there we go. A little better. And then bring him back down to the walk. And I get a little bit closer to him so that I can help direct him better. See if I can get him to stretch down longer. And there's that rooting again. I'm asking him to move out to the end of my line. It's better. He got distracted by the video camera for a moment. So we go back to the trot to see if we can find a better stretch and rhythm. And I'm liking this a lot better. He's slowing down a little bit. And just looks more even and balanced. And that trot work had improved from what we saw earlier. So I went ahead and brought him back down to the walk. Some days you just realize that your horse may not be able to give you the best that they have given you before. And so you just try to improve a little bit on what they are giving you for that day. And so he did improve on what I had seen from him earlier in the day. And so I go ahead and move on to the next thing. So I go ahead and change directions again to see if I can get a better stretch this way, since I got it the other way. And his walk is much freer. The stretch is much, much better than what I had from the beginning. But we're back to his harder direction. That's looking much better. I'm happy with that moment there, where he's starting to slow down and get a little more lift through his back, and he's stretching a little bit longer through his neck. He looks a lot more fluid than he did from when we first began this session. And that was much better trot work, so I go ahead and bring him back down to the walk. And then I'm bringing him back up to the trot because I wanted to see if I could get him to give me a little bit of stretch at the canter. On a good day, he can give me a stretch canter. So I'm just testing it out now that I got a better stretch at the trot to see if he could give me a little bit at the canter. And he does try. And again, he's quick after that transition, so I work at asking him to slow back down his rhythm so that he's able to balance himself and stretch. And obviously I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that canter because it's not quite there, but just testing it out every once in a while and see if he can give me more stretch. As we go, he'll get stronger and stronger. And then I'm going to go to the right and see if I can get a little bit of a stretch canter this way. Reorganizing my lunge line there. There he's rooting again. So I bring him on a little circle here, take a little bit of passive resistance on my line, and send him out with my whip. I want to try to develop a nice rhythm here at the trot before I try to ask him to canter for me. And there he goes, and he stretches a little bit there. He's working at it, trying to find his balance in that stretch canter. And so baby steps, he's working at trying to find that. I'm going to go ahead and bring him back down to the trot. Try to find a nice stretch. Make sure that he slows down after that transition from the canter. And then bring him back down to the walk. Get a little closer to him again so that I can try to keep him from rooting. Kind of keep a contact on that line and send his body out. And that was good, so I go ahead and end there. And here I am for our ride. The owner doesn't have a saddle to fit Kai, so we haven't ridden him very much. We've done a lot of our work from the ground. And the owner's saving up some money to be able to buy him a saddle. This is a saddle that someone let us borrow, but I feel that the triangle is too narrow and it doesn't seem to fit him quite well. I wanted to try it out and see how he goes with it. I had not ridden him in over a month when I did this video, and I've only ridden him a handful of times over the last year, so I'm not very familiar with what he feels like under saddle. I found that he was really sucked back and not as free in his movement when I started my ride, but it gets much better towards the end. I think some of it is me figuring him out and him also figuring out what I'm asking of him. I'm also curious to see a saddle that fits him better, if that allows him to move forward more freely. He's trying to figure out what my contact means. And then he's a little bit slow behind my leg. I'd like to see him a little bit more active. I add a few steps of leg yield as we go to try to get him to use his hind end, cross over with that inside hind leg to see if I can get a little more activity and also a better stretch from him. Here's my leg yield. He stepped in a little hole right there and he tripped back. I like how he was actively moving off of my leg. Just need to work on keeping him in the stretch as he does it. And I'm also curious to see what he would be like if I rode him with a dressage whip. I'm not sure if he's ever had one before or how he would be with one. I'll talk to his owner about that and see, or try it out and see what he does and what he thinks about that, just to help him get a little bit more activity. Getting a little bit better stretch there. Yeah, the second direction, he's figuring it out a little bit better. And then I go ahead and send him up to the trot, see what he feels like. And he feels very sluggish, not quite active in his movement. We'll work towards getting him a little bit more forward here at the trot. He's trying to figure out how to stretch down, so that's good. And he's giving me little moments of stretch. Good, and I just do a little bit because he hasn't been ridden in a long time. And just kind of getting a little feel for what he's like under saddle, and also I was trying out to see what he would feel like in this saddle. We'll go ahead and change directions, and his walk is looking better after that trot work. He's wanting to reach lower with his neck and also taking longer strides. And then I'll go ahead and send him up to the trot this way. There's some nice moments there. I think he does better this direction. Good. A little bit more active through his stride. We came up, so see if I can ask him to stretch back down. That's a little better. Better. And then I bring him back down to the walk. So again, his walk looks so much better after the trot work. I think it's just because he has that more momentum through his stride, so I can, next time when I ride him, I'd like to get a little bit more assertive and ask him to be a little more forward in the walk work right off the bat. But also I know that this horse takes quite a bit of time to warm up. And I'd be curious to try out a dressage whip with him and see how he responds to that. And also getting those shoes on him. I'm eager to do another video really soon with Kai after he gets his new rubber shoes. And I'd like to find a different saddle to try on him. And I know that he will feel so much better once we can figure out all these little pieces of the puzzle to help him be more comfortable. But we got to start somewhere, so here we are. I really love this horse. He has such a sweet spirit to him. Really good boy. And he's had to overcome a lot of physical pain that he was in, and it would show through a lot of behavioral problems, but he's really come through and feeling better and being a lot calmer, and he's just a really, really sweet horse. So I look forward to continuing to work with him and help him to improve. Thank you so much for watching.